Hello again, and welcome back to Java for Chem. Last time we talked about data types and variables, and while these are all nifty on their own, they're not particularly useful unless we can modify them using operators, which are going to be the subject of today's video. So, what do we mean when we're talking about operators? So an operator is basically those symbols that you play around with when you're doing math. The plus sign here and the negative sign here, these are what are known as operators. We can sort of understand them as a function where they take in two numbers and they have a very well-defined output. So as you can imagine, we have symbols for all of the four main mathematical operations. We have the plus for addition. We have the dash for subtraction. We have the asterisk for multiplication. And we have the forward slash for division. So there are a few other default operators we can look at here that we will go over. There is the percent sign for modulo. You may not have heard of that one before. This is basically the operator that allows us to do what is known as integer division. So if you take 9 and divide it by 2, the result is going to be 4 plus some sort of remainder divided by 2. So what the modulo operator does is it returns that remainder. So another way we can think about it is we can say 9 is made up of 4 times 2 plus 1. 4 is our dividend, 2 is our divisor, and 1 is our remainder. And that's what's going to be returned when we do 9 modulo 2. So let's do a quick example. If we go to print line and we print 9 modulo 2, the result is going to be 1. Another thing I want to point out here while we're here is let's do 9 divided by 2. The answer should be 4.5, but what we're going to get is 4. That's because this is integer division that's happening. All that's getting is the 4 and the remainder is being dropped. If you want the remainder, you have to tell the computer that this is a decimal number, and you do that just by adding 0.0 onto the end of both numbers, and you get 4.5. Simple enough. So there are two main other operators you should know. The double plus for increment, and the double dash for decrement. So you can probably understand what these are. If you have a value and you increment it, you increase its value by 1, and same but opposite for decrement, you decrease its value by 1. So let's just declare an int myint, and we'll give it a value of 0. Let's then take myint plus plus, finish that off with a semicolon, and then print the value of myint. We're just going to get 1. Simple as that. Now we can move on to the next major branch of operators, which are the logical operators, better known as the Boolean operators. So in the last episode, I told you about Boolean data types, and I told you that those are objects that are able to store true and false values. So Boolean operators basically allow us to do arithmetic with true and false values. They are the basis of Boolean arithmetic. So there are three main operators, Boolean operators: the and, the or, and the not. So how does this work? It's actually quite simple. Let's say we have two Boolean objects, A and B. If A is true, and B is true, then if we conjoin A and B using the AND operator, so the statement A and B, that is also true. The statement something and something is true is only true if both A and B are true. So if A is true and B is false, then the statement A and B is false. If A is false and B is true, then the statement A and B is also false. And if both are false, then A and B is false. Pretty simple. If we have the OR operator here, let's take A and B are both true, then A or B is also true. If A is true and B is false, then the statement is still true. That's because we only need either A or B to be true for the statement to be true. If A is false and B is true, then the statement is true, and only when both A and B are false is the statement false. Not is also pretty simple. If we have A and A is true, then not A is going to be false. And if A is false, then not A is going to be true. So now that we know a little bit more about the Boolean operators, let's see how they're applied in Java. In Java, we use the double ampersand as the symbol for the AND operator. We use the double vertical bars as the symbol for the OR operator, and we use the exclamation mark for the NOT operator. So we'll do a little quick example here. If we have a true, and then we AND that together with another true, and then we run, the result's going to be true. If we set one of these to a false, then we get a false, because for a true operator to put out false, both inputs need to be true. We can switch this over to an OR, and what we get is a true, because we only need one input to be true. So if we switch this over to a false, we're going to get a false. And if we have a false, but we just put an exclamation mark in front, we get a true, because it basically takes whatever input you give it, and it spits out the opposite. There is another major group of operators that spit out a Boolean output, and those are known as the comparison operators. You should have a fairly intuitive sense of what a comparison operator is. We have the right-facing angle bracket for less than. We have a left-facing angle bracket for greater than. We have the double equals sign for is equal to. And we have the exclamation mark equal sign for is not equal to. So let's just do a quick few examples. If you say 5 and you ask if it's less than 7, that is true. So when you run it, you're going to get a true. If you flip this around and you ask if 5 is greater than 7, you're going to get a false, because that's not the case. If you ask if 5 is equal to 7, you're going to get a false, because 5 is not equal to 7. But if you ask if it's not equal to 7, you're going to get a true. That's all fairly intuitive, I would hope. Another thing you should know is that you can modify the less than and greater than operators by putting an equal sign at the end, and these turns them so that you have a is equal to on the end. So we can ask if 7 is greater than 7, and it's not, so we're going to get a false. But if we put an equal sign on the end, we're going to get a true, because now we're asking is 7 greater than or equal to 7. The last thing I want to touch up on is concatenation. Concatenation is basically just putting two strings together. So we can declare two strings. We'll call them string 1, and we'll make that equal to hello. And then we'll get another string, and we'll call it string 2, and we'll make that equal to world. So let's say we want to print these two messages together. We want them to be together in the output. The way we would do that is we would do string 1, and we would just add it to string 2. So this tells you that the addition operator here, the plus sign, serves two functions, not only the addition operator, but the concatenation operator. If we hit run, we're going to see that the output here is hello world. Typically, we like a bit of proper, punctuation, not punctuation, syntax in our writing. So let's add in a space, and we'll concatenate that in with another plus operator, and we'll hit run. And now we see that we have a space between our message. And with that, I think this is a good place to end the episode. These last two episodes have been a bit more theory intense, and I feel these concepts are better understood through more concrete applications, which we will have plenty of opportunities to do in the next episode on if statements. Until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.